A moment of significant change or a turning point, altering your course, is known as an inflection point. In business, these moments have a significant impact in many ways. That's why we're speaking with leaders from across the asset management industry to hear the stories of their inflection points and the impact they've had on their journeys. Join me and my colleague Mark Spina as we explore the business of being in business, with insights that can help you wherever you may find yourself. This is Inflection Points.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Spina, president at Flex Networks. I'm joined today by Kathy Freeman. Kathy and I have known each other in the business for some time. It's a pleasure to have Kathy here today. I think many of you likely know Kathy from being in and around the business for a long time as well. Kathy Freeman Company, I know of as the go-to partner for firms looking to hire top executive talent. More importantly, talent that's going to help firm grow and rise above the competition. Kathy brings an unparalleled understanding of the investment industry and a national network of relationships. She's earned a national reputation for excellence, with over 99% of engagements resulting in a successful fit. I think in any dimension of life that constitutes an exceptional track record. Kathy's not just doing work around executive search. She and the firm also serve as a strategic advisor to the investment industry, specializing in board of directors search, management assessment, cultural audits, and succession planning. All of that, I should note, is backed by some outstanding proprietary research. And with no further ado, hello, Kathy.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Doing great. What were some of your formative inflection points? We know you for the professional you are today. We know you for the firm that you've built over many decades. Somehow, some way, Kathy Freeman and Company became a staple in the business, a staple in the industry. What were some of the early seeds of that? Either family, friends, schooling, activities, adventures, some combination thereof that set you on this path early on?
Okay, sure. I think that I love this business. I stumbled into search and recruiting early on out of college and really enjoyed the business, but I didn't feel it was getting done quite to my level of satisfaction. I was working with a lot of different industries at the time, real estate development, hospitality. There were so many different facets, different industries I was serving. And I felt like I was always coming to the table, learning what business someone was in. And I thought there's got to be a better way wherein I can come in and partner with a firm where I can bring some expertise, where I'm knowledgeable about the trends in the industry. And so that's really what crystallized my desire to focus on the investment industry. It was just my favorite clients were in the investment industry when I decided to open my own business. So that's wherein I really started and I wanted to focus. And so I would say what crystallized in my mind was I need to start at the ground floor. And so early on, I said, let me start working with advisors because I think they're the foundation for everything that we do starts with advisors. So I said, let me understand that first. And so I ended up working with a couple large organizations and doing their advisor work. And it was great and super insightful. I felt like as I learned my own personal levels of passion and satisfaction, it was more about assessment and understanding the catalysts of what makes someone successful in the advisory landscape. Back in the day, I know it's changed so much. It was really a lot of conversation about how much are we going to get paid to go from firm one to firm two?
Hasn't changed that much. It hasn't changed that much. Maybe some of the dialogue around it or the verbiage around it. I think at the heart of it, it is maybe, let's just say, economically enlightened. But continue, Kathy.
It just didn't fill me up personally and professionally.
Right.
I always tell people you've got to do whatever you're going to do. It's got to really meet your passion threshold. And so I morphed from focusing on advisors into working with other sales and leadership type roles where I could really dig in and understand what somebody's made of, how they do what they do, why are they passionate about it, and most importantly, and I learned this from my clients early on, what's the process that you put behind your success? And can you replicate the process that has provided your success in company A, if I'm going to pull you over to company B, you're going to do this for someone else. What is it foundationally that you're bringing over here that's going to allow you to replicate that success? And I would say early on, it was trial and error. What do I really like? And it's just been a wonderful journey to here we are 3 decades later, and it never gets old.
That's an awesome opening in my view, and likely the audience's view. I want to go to the very beginnings of what you said. You said you stumbled into the space. Describe the stumble a bit. We've had them. I know. I was talking to somebody as early as this week that I graduated from university, and at the point of graduation, I had no idea the business that I've now been in for 30 years even existed. I'm a stumbler myself, an early stumbler, and I'm intrigued by others who've gone down that same stumbling path only to have it blossom into something awesome.
I would say that I moved to Southern California and I was looking for a job. I was probably a year and a half out of college. The recruiting firm I went to help me provide some interviews kept telling me that I was not doing well on those and that I wasn't getting called back. And I was really baffled. So what I realized and what they told me after I went to work for them was they did that intentionally because they wanted to hire me for the recruiting business.
That's awesome.
And that was awful. And that was so unethical. But it was a lesson.
Yeah.
I learned. So I got into recruiting and I really enjoyed it. I didn't like the facets of what that company was all about and didn't appreciate their lack of ethics. So I migrated into a few different firms before I opened mine. I would tell you the catalyst to start my own company came about with a CEO who decided, this was back at the time of the SNL scandal, and my CEO decided he was going to leverage my paycheck and borrow money from me.
Okay.
And I didn't feel like that was quite ethical either. I called his bluff and I got my money, but then I needed to find a new job. Have to make these decisions. And I had a lot of support from my family to say, if you really love this and you have a vision for how you would do it differently, we'd love to support you and see how that goes. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was in sales, super supportive, and they always believed in my capabilities. And so we said, hey, let's give this a try. My husband today, we were dating back at the time, and he had just opened a new office building for his business. And he said, I have a closet I haven't built out yet.
That's funny.
You could put a phone in this closet. And that's where I started my business, in an internal like room closet with a phone.
That is too funny. I didn't know any of this. See, this always happens too, Kathy. People have a good relationship with and think you have a good understanding of their history. There's these insights and super intriguing, I think, kind of personal moments that we appreciate you sharing. That's a definite inflection point, what you just described, the decision to go out on your own and then having the support group around you. Let's go back though. Again, we'll go back before we go forward. You said something that was the process behind the success. So do you find people able to describe that well to you? Their own processes.
If they don't have an ability to describe their process that's the foundation of success, then they're likely not going to go that far in the interview process that I conduct for my clients, right? Because I found that over many years, the most successful executives that we've interviewed and those that have really made an impact on this industry are those that have a process and understand that it takes certain steps to achieve success.
That's fair. And I think it's fair, true, and a great takeaway from this talk we're having today for people listening. All right, let's go forward again. Dad was an entrepreneur. Husband had the office space. Those are pretty good preconditions. Not perfect, but pretty good preconditions. What gave you personally, like, the wherewithal, the belief that you could do it and start your own business?
I think faith from family to say you can do it. If you do Strength Finders, Mark, I'm an activator as number one, and I'm positivity on number two.
I can see both of those, yeah.
Without really acknowledging at that time, what do those mean? I'm very much of a doer and develop out the vision and then go ahead and execute against it. And so I had the tenacity to get out there and really make that happen, to build up the company, to continue to iterate, to get past obstacles, and to continue to move the ball forward to where we are today. I would say my dad raised me with a Calvin Coolidge quote, which was nothing takes the place of persistence. And so it's not the education, it's not the insight. It's really just, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Sometimes that's easier in your life than other times, but you got to keep the momentum going.
As we do these conversations, Kathy, I'm always listening intently and concurrently thinking about what people are saying and what might be a title for this show as we put it out. And I think that nothing takes the place of persistence certainly will be amongst the short list of phrases that we consider for this one. Let's get more current. I appreciate you taking us through those formative stages of the business. Take us more current, though. You make the leap, you start the business, you focus on the investment and asset management space because you can be an expert. It's an industry, it's a sector that you get energized by developing an expertise. A flywheel starts to turn, right? You spend more time in the space, network more, and all of a sudden, in quotes, you've got this self-propelled business. What do you see now? What are the competitive forces that you are seeing in search? Like what's changed most, say, this is in the last 5 years? Let's go pre-COVID, post-COVID. What's changed most for you, your business, and the competitive forces that surround it?
I would say the industry, both the asset management, investment management, wealth management, as well as my side in executive search, everybody's had to really transition and become more adaptable. Innovation is really key coming out of the pandemic. No one knew how to predict and analyze what was happening. So everyone needed to take a step back and have an appreciation for transitioning into new white space areas. And then how are we going to create the path from there? It was a tremendous amount of learning for everyone. We realized some people didn't really appreciate or weren't attracted to learning and being adaptable, right? So there were a fair amount of people, I think, that we saw bouncing from the industry. Some, I feel like, enjoyed the time off. Many of our colleagues in the industry are well off, and they spent time in the mountain properties or the beach properties and what have you. It seemed like they lost their edge, if you will.
I could see that.
That it happens, right? And it can happen to us. So coming out of the pandemic and in the years that have rolled up to today, what I look for, what I see as even more valuable is that lean in towards innovation, that lean into critical thinking, that lean into really being that adaptable executive to be able to look around corners and anticipate what is coming. We've seen the products changing, right? We did our survey. I think we saw 41% of leaders said that they really see growth this year in 2023 coming out of alternatives. That wasn't the case last year,
Right.
or the year before. So products change that executives are taking on or that firms are looking for is always changing. Back in 08 and 09, even back after the 9/11, when the markets correct and are volatile, and that happens today as well, we end up doing a lot more work in the marketing areas. The organizations that we work with are being consolidated from a profitability and revenue standpoint with this market. They need to be more efficient and more creative about how to drive engagement, and especially coming out of the pandemic when we do so much more today with data, with webinars like this. So marketing has really emerged as a really key functionality to help lead organizations down a more profitable path in how to do and reimagine business and engage with consumers differently. So there's been a lot of work there. So we've gone through a lot of change coming out of the pandemic, no doubt.
It sounds like it. And I'm glancing up here and I'm looking at one of the infographics in your 2022 talent trends report. And what are the most critical priorities for talent management? And you likely recall that at the very top of the list is driving growth at 63%, followed by strategic thinking at 58%, and then a bit of a drop off to fostering innovation at 40%. The top three, though, very much about growth, strategy, innovation. And so I'm going somewhere with this one. You talked about the need for people to be able to articulate their processes. How do you try and discern, like, is this person a growth driver, or was their firm growing? And now I'm taking this person and putting them into a new environment. What makes you or the new firm comfortable that this person can drive growth?
That's a great question. People have a propensity to speak in really big picture language when you're talking to them. And I learned evaluating wholesalers back in the 90s, right? You'd
Yeah.
get these individuals that would say, hey, I brought in $1 billion last year. And people at 28, 29 years old were making over $1 million a year. It was a wonderful lesson for me because, to your point, they were in the right place in the right time. They had the hot tech stock or what fund or whatever that allowed them.
I wasn't necessarily making a point, but you picked up on a thread, Kathy. So keep rolling with it.
I
Yep.
feel like the point is that you have to peel back the onion
Yeah.
to really identify how much has to do with somebody's capabilities and contributions versus are they at the right place in the right time in the market
Exactly. Very much.
cycle or the company's cycle? So I love that question. And I feel like what's really critical when I'm assessing an executive is to strip away the bigger sweeping statement and then dig into what was your part? What had your real imprint on it out of that achievement? Take me through a little bit more detail about how you created that vision or what your participation was in casting that vision. And then we can dive into how did you get engagement for your vision? How did you get advocacy to encourage and move that vision forward in the cycle? And then how did you lead and execute against that vision? So you really have to pull people back and figure out, hey, are you in a really innovative firm that started this and then you pulled it along? It's skill sets and capabilities. And you can really start hearing as they talk, what is their real passion and what's their real contribution?
That's fantastic. It's fantastic from if you're in the position of hiring somebody. It's fantastic if you're in the position of interviewing and running yourself through that little set of questions that you just enunciated there. That's great, Kathy. So look, that was one of a few infographics and points that stood out to me. Are there any others that particularly stood out to you from your report that you want to describe to the audience?
There's a couple of critical things that are going on in the industry right now. One of them is the demographics are against us at the moment. We've got an extraordinary amount of boomers that are going to be retiring. I think they said about 75 million in the next 7 years. So by 2030, that impacts the investment management industry because whether wealth management or asset management, not quite as much at fintech, we've got a aging leadership population. Advisors are aging, the leadership in our companies are aging. We have a greater preponderance of these boomer leaders than many other industries. Tech doesn't have them, right? They don't have to struggle with this. So we have to be really attentive to this demographic and to really be mindful of what are our succession plans. And it plays into this, what we found this year, which is really a dilemma around talent shortage. We really don't have sufficient talent. I think 39% came back and said, we don't really have sufficient talent in our leadership pipeline to fuel our growth for the business tomorrow. So that's fairly startling. And we have to figure out how we're going to address this. So I say, as we look at different industries that are struggling, our industry has challenges ahead of it, but it's wonderful, right? Full of ethical people, full of positive people, full of a mission that really serves people to develop their retirements for the future and allow their kids to go to college. There's so much positive we have in our industry. I think we really need to bring a bigger voice to our industry and try to start attracting those younger generation, and the diversity engagement needs to go up. And so both of those areas, I think we have such a wonderful opportunity here, and we desperately need to backfill our industry with more people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you also made mention, it's coming back to me now in the report, right, about a missed opportunity or an underutilized opportunity to note the philanthropic work that's done by large parts of the industry as a way to obviously do good within a community, also as a way to attract talent within a community to the firm that might otherwise look at investment management as a more staid and sterile place. Like it's actually an industry doing important work with a philanthropic core at many firms.
It is, and we don't talk about it as much. What ends up getting to the headlines, remember Occupy Wall Street
I
and how
do.
vilified our industry was back in '08 and '09. It like started at Wall Street, and anybody associated with investing was bad. And
Yeah.
I've always felt like that's the positivity side of me, but I've always felt like we need to be more proactive in our voice to say, this is a wonderful industry. But it hadn't been, the people in our industry were not as amazing as they are, I wouldn't have stayed working alongside for 30 years. I love my friends. I love my colleagues, my clients, everyone I work with. It's what fills me up. And I'm not singular in this. You've stayed in the business for a long time as well. And we get together in these industry conferences and we're always trying to figure out, how do we make the industry better? How do we serve the general population at a better level? How do we become more engaged with our clients? How do we work more diligently to make sure that investors have the outcomes they need to be able to retire and take care of their families? This is noble work. We need to shout that out more, because the next generations, those Gen Zs, they're all about this, and they need to know that we're invested in a better outcome than just making money.
Awesome. Totally agree. I think you're spot on in the narrative and the way you articulate it. Picking up on your positivity, right? Where we're going next is, what's the source of it? Like outside of the professional realm, do you have an ongoing source of inspiration or motivation that's made you more resilient? What are the sources of inspiration outside of work that you bring into work to keep you going?
I'm that my work and my life is very interweaved. I feel like if you have the gift to work in an industry that you're super passionate about, it's not work. I always try to tell people that funnel your career after a passion so that it doesn't feel like I'm showing up to work every day. I never feel that way. I love what I do. People say, are you going to retire at some point? Hard to think about it because these are all my friends, and I love assessing and learning from people in the industry. That really fills me up, is really, where do you get your ideas for being creative and for innovating? I learn every day during my search work what is going on, what is new, how are people thinking about the business differently. But that translates into my own life, into my own business, into my own personal life too. I get best book list, I get everything.
That's cool.
So it's not separate of work and professional versus personal. I would say that. I would also tell you that my faith, I'm a Christian. I feel my faith is something that I anchor towards, that I don't have the necessity to worry. So even when the market is being volatile, I rely on my faith. And so I get up every day and I know some great things are going to happen. And I'm going to try to be a part of that, as opposed to being that catalyst for worry and for concern. So I always try to take that positive high road with people. I end up talking to people that have lost their jobs for no reason
Mm,
other than consolidation. And we're trying to save a little bit at the bottom line. They're great people. I try to take some time to encourage people to say, look, don't internalize this. This happens to people. We've seen it time and time again. And it's just a moment in time. So we try to take the time to encourage people in the industry and realize that these things happen. We have to be positive. We have to rise above.
I hadn't thought about it that way. You are the perfect counterbalance, so to people going through that process. And you've seen it, you've seen people navigate through it and come out in different and better forms. So that perspective, shaped by your faith, shaped by your professional experience, it's a superpower, is how I would describe it, Kathy.
Do you remember back in 08, 09, I used to see you at the ICI. Remember the ICI, General Membership Meeting?
I did.
I remember 2009 and Jamie Dimon was there. And I think JP Morgan had just bought Bear Stearns, or it was in the spring. Bear Stearns, they were the first one to go, right?
Amongst the first, yeah.
Anyway, I just remember it was such a stressful time and everybody was concerned. And Jamie Dimon got up there and he just made us all laugh because he talked about how he told us his story and how he had gotten fired. Was it Travelers or something? And how then he migrated over to Bank One, but he got fired and he goes home and his daughter is worried about whether she's going to lose her cell phone.
That's funny. That's funny.
It
Yeah.
was like, here's Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, and he's humbling himself to share with us that, you know what, we all go through this type of situation, right? There's always peaks and valleys, and our kids aren't going to understand, and we just have to be strong and get through it. And I just really appreciated his leadership for that.
That's great. Also, I feel like we could keep this going for a while, Kathy. I think this is the first conversation on inflection points that we've had with somebody from executive search. You've made a terrific case for doing this more frequently. So if you're up for it, we'll do this again at some point in 2023.
Oh, that would be great. I would love to. Totally enjoyed it.
All right. Awesome. So I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you, Kathy, and a big thank you to our listeners for your time, allowing us to occupy and potentially enhance your mind space. We are a work in progress, as Kathy just illustrated. We're a work in progress as people and a podcast. If you picked up anything of interest from the conversation today, please subscribe, leave a rating and review. And until next time, keep looking for and creating your own inflection points. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Mark.
The information contained in this recording is provided as is for educational and informational purposes only and should not serve as the basis for any trading or investing decisions. Flex Networks makes no representations and disclaims all express, implied, and statutory warranties of any kind to any viewer, listener, or other third party. Neither Flex Networks nor any of its affiliates make any endorsement of any particular company, security, product, or financial strategy, and nothing contained in this recording should be construed as investment advice. Investors should undertake their own due diligence and carefully evaluate companies before investing.